VCHA's disappearance has to be one of the worst cases of mishandling and mismanagement that I've ever seen in the K-pop music industry, and I think that we need to talk about it. For those of you guys that don't know, VCHA was a global girl group that debuted earlier this year, and they were formed from the survival show A2K, or America to Korea, with the goal of bridging the gap between the American music industry and the Korean idol trainee system. Now, I actually have covered this group in the past. In fact, I made 2 videos on them, once during their pre-debut and another one during their official debut. And in those videos, I brought up a lot of criticisms that I had of this group and questions that I had for their future. And at the time, I feel like a lot of people disagreed with me, but nowadays, looking at it in hindsight, especially after they've been MIA for practically 6 months, I think a lot of the stuff that I brought up in those videos ended up coming true. The last time this group was active was back around maybe late February, early March. Around that time, they actually released a song called Only One, which I had very positive things to say about it. And they also went on tour with Twice for their Ready to Be tour. They were the opening show for the Las Vegas, Mexico, and Brazil stops for that tour. I was really excited to see what this group was going to do next. Everything was looking promising, but then it just stopped. All of a sudden, it was complete radio silence up until today. That's almost 6 months of no updates, no posts, no new announcements, no new music. And as I'm recording this video, it is the 1-year anniversary of the end of A2K and the release of the pre-debut single, YO Universe. So I thought it was the perfect time to talk about this group, what went wrong, and where they are now. Granted, neither JYP Entertainment nor Republic Records have actually made a statement about what's going on behind the scenes with this group, so we really don't have a lot of information to go off of. A lot of this is going to be speculation, and I'm going to be very careful about the speculations that we do make, but ultimately that's what we have to resort to, because there really is no statement, no updates, no news, not even like a, hey guys, you know, we're figuring things out, we're gonna be on a hiatus, we'll come back at some point, don't worry, everything is good. That would be enough, but even that has not been done, so that is very concerning. The future of this group is pretty much up in limbo. It's not looking good. So let's start at the beginning of where I think everything started to go wrong for VCHA, and that date is March 11th, 2024. On this day, JYP Entertainment would take to VCHA's official Twitter page to announce that Kaylee would be going on a hiatus due to a health condition. Now, they would never actually be very clear about what this condition was, but they did say that they would provide more updates closer to around the time that Kaylee would resume her activities. It's hard to say how serious this health condition really was, but given the fact that she is really young, I think it was a good idea to put her on a hiatus and give her as much time as she needed to recover from what she was going through. But clearly this definitely had an impact on the group activities. A lot of stuff probably ended up getting delayed due to the fact that they were missing a member. But despite that, things were looking really good for VCHA, because around this time they also announced that they were going to be performing at Lollapalooza. Lollapalooza is a music festival that happens here in America, and it happens every year. Usually there's a good mix of both small and big artists. For example, I think the year before this, New Jeans was performing at Lollapalooza, and they drew in some really big crowds. So VCHA performing at this music festival was a really good idea, because it could give them the exposure they really needed to build a much stronger fan base. The group would remain active all the way up until May, where they would do a photo shoot with Teen Vogue, and then they would continue to post things to their Instagram, like videos, shorts, and even some pictures. And that takes us all the way up until late June, where everything just seems to stop. But at this point, there was still nothing to worry about, because they were still set to perform at Lollapalooza. Maybe they were just taking a little bit of a break so that they can come back all together with Kaylee, have a real comeback with a new song out that they would potentially perform at their Lollapalooza show, right? It makes sense. It's a great time to promote that. But then things went even worse. On July 19th, the official Lollapalooza Twitter account would announce that due to unforeseen circumstances, VCHA would not be able to perform at the show this year. And this devastated the entire fan base because after what was weeks of radio silence, this announcement was the nail on the coffin. Since then, they've only posted on their Instagram twice. Once to celebrate Savannah's birthday, and the second to celebrate Camila's birthday. That last post was on August 10th. And since then, there has been nothing else on any of their social medias. And that takes us to today, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I tried really hard to find a source or any kind of information that might give us an answer into what's going on behind the scenes, but it seems like no one knows anything. The closest thing I found was a post that Savannah's sister made where she told us, be patient, which is, you know, we don't even know if this is relating to VCHA. It could just be something random, but that's about it, man. We're really grasping for straws here by looking at stuff like this, but I mean, there's really no other choice. So now we get into the fun part where I get to tell you what I think is going on, and I have two prevailing theories. The first one is that I think there might be a contract dispute going on between Republic Records and JYP Entertainment. We know that this group was made in collaboration with both of them, but it does seem like Republic Records has a little bit more control. Perhaps they put in a lot more money or invested a lot more into the development of this group. And given the fact that VCHA lives in the United States compared to all the other JYP groups, I think it's safe to say that Republic Records ultimately has the final say. And I think that's part of the problem because I don't know if Republic Records was necessarily ready to manage an idol group, because managing an idol group I think is very different from managing just a normal American artist. The promotion game has to be a lot better, the social media game has to be a lot better, and oftentimes American labels don't tend to promote the artists that they don't find profitable. So with VCHA not necessarily getting a very positive reception with their debut, I think it made Republic Records a lot more cautious about the amount of stuff that they invested into this group, and I think now they're reassessing on how they want to move forward. And this brings me into my second theory, which I guess is kind of a continuation of the last theory, but basically, what I think could also be happening is that VCHA could be undergoing a rebrand. I think Republic Records realizes that the music that VCHA was putting out wasn't really resonating with the audience because it sounded like Kids Bop music, it sounded like Disney Channel music, and they probably want to give them more time to come up with a completely new sound, and also potentially give them more time to train and practice, because honestly, VCHA only had about a year to train together, and in K-pop terms, that's not a lot of time. One of the criticisms that I had about this group when they debuted was that they were a little bit unpolished. I felt that their vocals, for example, were not at the level of quality that they should have been at, and a year more of training could have benefited them greatly. I think that there is a possibility that Kaylee might not ever come back, which means that they might be looking for ways to terminate her contract. And if that's the case, the company might be trying to reassess whether they want to continue after losing a member, or if they just disband the group altogether. From the very beginning, I think VCHA's biggest obstacle was the fact that they're being marketed as a global girl group. The American pop music industry is very different from the way that it is in Korea. For example, we don't have music shows, we don't have live performances. The way that you promote and market your artists is completely different, which is why I don't think VCHA was ever going to work. The infrastructure that needed to be there for this group to succeed is just not there. The big gimmick with VCHA is that it's made up of members from America, but I always thought that this wasn't necessarily enough of a selling point to bring in the audiences that they wanted, because to be honest, the most popular groups in America are Korean, right? Like, these K-pop artists are already getting enough love and attention here overseas. In fact, you look at some of the most popular groups here, and a lot of them don't even have an English-speaking member in the group. The language barrier isn't much of an issue anymore, and I feel like a lot of audiences are beginning to give K-pop a chance, even if they may not understand it, because it's kind of become a trendy thing to do now. And then you mix that with the fact that a lot of their songs early on got criticized because they sounded like Disney Channel songs or they sounded like Kids Bop music. And that puts them in a very bad position because you're already coming into an overly saturated market. Then you're being branded as a global girl group, which puts you in direct competition with the other global girl groups that currently exist, like XG and Cat's Eye, both of which have been wildly more successful than VCHA ever has. Both of these groups seem to be trying to approach a more mature perspective, and that is resonating a lot better with the audiences. In many ways, I think that Cat's Eye is exactly what VCHA should have been from the beginning, but based on the members that they chose and because they wanted to go in a much younger direction, it was impossible for them to do that. Another strength that Cat's Eye has is the fact that their social media game is extremely strong. Every time they post a clip or a video on TikTok, it does really well because immediately you can see a lot of personality come through. They even had like a Netflix documentary, which I know got a lot of controversy because there was some drama behind the scenes about like some of the members saying certain things about other members. It is what it is, but regardless of that, the push into that social media game has been extremely strong with Cat's Eye, which is why their songs have been performing relatively well so far. Even when VCHA was active, their social media game was extremely weak, and again, like I said before, it makes me feel like the social media team behind them just was not prepared for managing a girl group. The problem here is that I feel like the company was really banking on the fact that the A2K survival show was enough to bring in as many people as necessary to get this group going. But honestly, I think from the beginning, the A2K show was flawed in its concept, in its execution. I think there's a lot of problems with that format that JYP for some reason doesn't seem like they want to change. Let me remind you that this whole thing with like the pendant and getting the stones and maxing out your stones and getting to that final lineup, the way that it worked is literally identical to the way that the NITSY show was. And that show was pretty much a replica of the original 16 survival show that made twice. But here is why 16 worked and A2K didn't. 16 was made up of 16 of the best idols that JYP had to offer at the time. These guys weren't just randomly picked or auditioned a month before the show began. In many cases, some of them had been training for years. Geo, for example, had been training for 10 years before the 16 show even started. In fact, many of the girls that didn't make it into that final debut lineup ended up debuting later on, and many of them went on to be extremely successful. Look at Natty, for example. She didn't win 16, she didn't make it into twice, and now she's in one of the most popular groups in Kiss of Life. With VCHA, they auditioned the girls on the spot. Within a month, they brought them over to the LA boot camp. At the LA boot camp, they only spent like a week or something like that. I don't remember. It's been quite a long time, but I know it was very short. And then after that, you brought them over to Korea. Within less than a year, your goal was to try to train all of these girls and then debut them immediately. Like, I'm sorry, but that's not enough time. That's not nearly enough time. A lot of them were varying in their levels of talent and quality, and you definitely needed at least 2 to 3 years before these girls were ready to go out and debut. I think the company got a little bit too comfortable with the fact that it worked with Twice, and so they did the format again, and it worked with NITSY, and then they did the format again, but I don't think it worked this time. And it might not even work with Next Z, which is the boy group, the Japanese boy group that they did with this exact same format. But they just debuted, so honestly, it's hard to say how well they'll perform. They definitely look a lot more promising than VCHA ever did, but again, it's just the varying levels of quality is something that you're going to have to experience when you do something like that, and VCHA is just a casualty of that. So at the end of the day, what do I think needs to happen? Well, personally, I think if they do plan on continuing this group, they have to rebrand it. They have to take the time to figure out a proper direction to take this in and follow through with it and be on board, everybody on the same page, on the same team, and just go all in, or you just disband the group, cut your losses, and call it a day. And that sucks to say, because VCHA's inevitable downfall is not their fault, and they do not deserve it. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyways, with that being said, let me know what you guys think about this group. Is this group doomed, or is there a way to save them? Let me know your thoughts on how you would fix it down in the comments below. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.